As I prepared to return to my hometown for the birth of my child, I was stunned by what I heard. With a smirk on her face, my mother-in-law snapped, "Why don't you just stay there forever? I don't want to see your freeloading face again." Her harsh words stung, but I kept my composure, responding calmly, "All right, take care then." My name is Michelle, and I'm a 32-year-old professional. For the past 3 years, I've been in a relationship with Kevin, which began at a party over our shared love of music. After exchanging numbers, we spent our evenings talking about everything, our favorite songs, work challenges, and life in general, often over drinks at a local bar. Time with Kevin always flew by, and it wasn't long before we became a couple. I'd never been happier. Despite our busy careers, we cherished our weekends together. Knowing I'd see Kevin at the end of a long week motivated me to work harder and stay productive. Our relationship had a profound impact on my life, boosting my career as Kevin offered both support and inspiration. After a year together, we made a significant decision. We moved in with each other, both serious about our future and starting to talk about marriage. Living together brought us closer, helping us understand each other's quirks and daily habits. Now, a year into cohabitation, my desire to marry Kevin is stronger than ever, and I've been eagerly waiting for him to propose, sensing he's just waiting for the right moment. Then, one evening, Kevin invited me to dinner at a fancy restaurant. It wasn't a special occasion, but something felt different. Maybe tonight was the night. I arrived after work, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. As soon as I saw him, I noticed Kevin seemed even more anxious than I was. Oddly enough, his nervousness calmed me, and his awkward greeting made me chuckle. As we made our way through dinner, Kevin's tension was impossible to miss. Finally, after the main course, he softly said, "Michelle." His eyes locked onto mine with a seriousness that made my heart race. "You're the most wonderful person I've ever known, and I want to cherish you forever. I hope you feel the same about me. Will you marry me?" He presented a ring as he spoke. My response was immediate and filled with joy. Yes, I couldn't wait to start our life together. Our engagement filled me with happiness, but soon reality kicked in. We had to meet each other's families, plan gatherings, and start organizing our wedding, all while balancing demanding jobs. It was a lot to handle, but Kevin and I made time to move forward with our plans, excited for the future that awaited us. When I introduced Kevin to my parents, they instantly took a liking to him, charmed by his sincerity and warmth. Their approval meant the world to me, and I was grateful they fully embraced our decision to marry. However, our visit to Kevin's parents didn't go as smoothly. The moment Kevin's mother met me, she bluntly remarked, "So, you're Kevin's fiancé? You seem rather plain." Her harsh words left me stunned. Before I could even react, Kevin quickly stepped in. "Mom, what are you saying?" "She's the woman I've chosen," he said, his voice defensive. "I'm just being honest," his mother shot back. Kevin's father intervened, trying to diffuse the tension. "Enough, Susan. That's uncalled for." Despite their efforts to stand up for me, I couldn't easily shake the sting of Kevin's mother's words. Later that evening, Kevin apologized. "Michelle, I'm so sorry about my mom. She's always been straightforward, sometimes too much so. Honestly, it's never sat well with me either," he admitted, surprising me with his candidness. "Please don't let her words get to you. If she ever steps out of line after we're married, just tell me. I'll take care of it," he promised, his sincerity easing my worries. From the start of our relationship, Kevin had always shown a protective side, and even now, as we navigated the difficult introduction with his family, he stood by me. But as we approached an upcoming family gathering, I couldn't shake my anxiety. I feared that Susan might not only disrespect me but also my parents. Despite my concerns, Kevin reassured me that he would handle things delicately, ensuring that I wouldn't have to face his mother's harshness alone. I had prepared my parents in advance about Susan's strong-willed and difficult personality, so they were somewhat ready for what might unfold. Still, as the day of the family meeting arrived, my nerves were on edge for an entirely new set of reasons. "Hello, I'm Kevin's dad. It's a pleasure to meet you," Jack greeted warmly, extending his hand to my parents. "We're Michelle's mom and dad," they responded politely, maintaining a friendly atmosphere. They exchanged pleasantries with Jack, and the mood started off on a positive note. However, Susan remained distant, seating herself without greeting anyone and immediately ordering a drink. "I'll have a red wine." "Looks like we'll need something to make this interesting," she remarked casually, her comment casting an uncomfortable pall over the gathering. My parents, caught off guard by her bluntness, were momentarily speechless. Both Jack and Kevin, clearly irritated by her behavior, quickly apologized. As the meal went on, my parents and Jack got along well, engaging in friendly conversation. Meanwhile, Susan remained focused on her meal, silent for the most part, but as she drank more, her demeanor shifted. She began rudely interjecting into the conversation. A government job may be stable, but the pay's nothing to brag about. Kevin's marrying into such boring people, she blurted out, her tone dripping with disdain. The tension grew as she became more disruptive, her remarks cutting deeper. If they have kids, they'll probably be just as dull, she added, pushing the limits of decorum. At that, Jack had had enough. That's enough, he said sternly, his voice full of anger. You need to leave now. Reluctantly, Susan stood, muttering under her breath about how she was just being honest as Jack escorted her outside and arranged for a cab to take her home. When he returned, both he and Kevin apologized profusely for her behavior, clearly embarrassed by the way the evening had unfolded. I was thankful we had reserved a private room. Susan had proven to be a bigger challenge than anticipated. At our wedding, however, she was noticeably more reserved, likely due to Jack's stern warning that she had to behave impeccably or face serious consequences. He had even hinted at divorce if she embarrassed them again. Thankfully, she held back and the wedding proceeded flawlessly, much to my relief. With that, Kevin and I began our married life with great enthusiasm. Our relationship was wonderful, filled with happiness and a sense of partnership. We shared household responsibilities equally, making sure neither of us felt overwhelmed. Kevin, an excellent cook, often took on the role of chef even on nights when he came home late from work. Cooking together became one of our favorite ways to bond and make our time as a couple even more enjoyable. Kevin, ever thoughtful, made a point to visit his family alone as much as possible, mindful of both my feelings and the tension between Susan and me. Thanks to this, I was spared any direct confrontation or snide remarks from her, and I deeply appreciated Kevin's consideration. Then, unexpectedly, tragedy struck. Jack suddenly fell ill and passed away. Kevin and I rushed to the hospital, but by the time we arrived, it was too late. Dad, Kevin whispered in disbelief, his voice breaking with grief. Jack's death hit him hard. Susan, too, was devastated, crying out in anguish, "How could you leave me like this?" Despite the strained relationship I had with Susan, I couldn't help but feel profound sympathy for her in that moment. Watching her grieve made me empathize with her loss, and we mourned together for Jack, a man who had always shown me nothing but kindness. In the days that followed, Kevin and I became deeply involved in the funeral arrangements, navigating our own sadness while trying to support each other. Kevin took the lead, organizing the proceedings, and I did everything I could to be by his side. I did everything I could to support Kevin during this challenging period. The funeral went smoothly, and it felt like we had given Jack a fitting farewell. Gradually, life began to return to its usual rhythm. It took time, but Kevin and I eventually adjusted to life without Jack. Kevin seemed especially determined to move forward, embracing a renewed sense of purpose. Just as we were finding our new normal, an unexpected challenge arose. One day, Susan appeared at our doorstep, catching us completely off guard. "Kevin, please, I need help," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Mom, what's wrong?" Kevin asked, clearly disturbed by her unusual demeanor. She sighed, her tone tinged with vulnerability. "Since your father passed, I've been feeling so terribly lonely. Nothing feels the same, nothing tastes right. I just wanted to see the faces of my only family, my son and his wife." Her words struck a chord, and her desperation was palpable. "Could I stay with you for a little while? I feel like I'll be crushed by loneliness if I'm left alone any longer," she pleaded. Kevin and I were taken aback by her request. We hesitated, unsure, but Susan seemed so fragile that we doubted she had the energy to be hostile toward me. We reasoned that a short stay wouldn't be harmful, so we agreed to let her stay. Surprisingly, Susan adapted well. She even started helping with household chores, expressing her gratitude. "Staying in your home is the least I can do. Thank you, you're lifesavers," she said, genuinely appreciative. Both Kevin and I appreciated her efforts, and life seemed manageable, even pleasant. However, after about 5 months, Susan slowly began reverting to her old ways. One day, she casually remarked, "Michelle, aren't you planning to quit your job? Isn't it normal for wives to stop working?" signaling a return to her previous behavior. Her tone was familiar, reminding me of the old Susan we had been cautious of. You've been working all this time, she added, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if expecting me to justify myself. I started to address the issue, but Susan's tone quickly grew harsher, signaling that she was reverting to her old self. Turning to Kevin, I said, "We need to talk to your mom about moving back to her hometown." When Kevin broached the subject with Susan, her response shocked us both. "I've already sold the family home," she confessed. Kevin and I exchanged stunned glances. "Mom, why would you do that without discussing it with us? That's our family home. I inherited it from Dad," Kevin said, disbelief in his voice. "Selling it was my decision," Susan responded defensively, but her dismissive attitude stung. "You should have at least told us," Kevin countered, frustration clear in his tone. "I forgot. Sorry, but now I have nowhere else to go, so please don't kick me out," Susan pleaded, leaving Kevin and me speechless, struggling to process this sudden revelation. As we were trying to come to terms with the situation, another unexpected development arose. I discovered I was pregnant. Kevin and I were overjoyed. We had hoped for a child, but after some time, we were almost ready to give up, thinking it might not happen due to our age. This news felt like a miracle. However, the joy of expecting a baby was dampened by the thought of dealing with Susan during the pregnancy. Her complaints had resumed, and she began to argue with Kevin. "Why do I have to cook for both of you? I'm only staying here because of Kevin, not you," she snapped at me. "Traditionally, it's the wife who handles all the housework," she added, ignoring the reality of how we shared responsibilities. Kevin explained to her that it wasn't fair for her to avoid chores related to me, but Susan continued to cook only for herself and Kevin and would do only her laundry. Despite Kevin's attempts to correct her behavior, her remorse was always temporary before she slipped back into her old habits. At my wit's end and feeling overwhelmed, I realized I needed a break. The stress of managing Susan, combined with the excitement and challenges of my pregnancy, was becoming too much to handle. I decided to begin my maternity leave early and return to my parents' home for some peace. When I discussed this with Kevin, he suggested a solution we both agreed on. As we made our plans, I informed Susan about our decision and began preparing for the move. "You're going back home to give birth?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Yes, I believe it's the best decision for a safer childbirth, and it also means I'll be taking a break from household duties for a while." "Kevin supports this decision," I explained calmly. Susan smirked, her disdain clear. "Why not just stay at your parents' house forever? I don't want to see your parasitic face around here anyway. I bet even Kevin's had enough of you. Don't bother coming back to this house," she sneered. Surprisingly, her harsh words didn't hurt me. Instead, they brought a sense of relief. "All right then, take care," I replied, remaining calm. I returned to my parents' house, where they welcomed me with open arms, providing the peace and comfort I needed during this time. A month later, Kevin came to visit me with exciting news. "I finally got the green light from work to transition to remote work permanently, and I found us a new place to live," he announced, beaming. "That's fantastic," I exclaimed, overjoyed. Kevin had rented an apartment close to my parents' home, making it easier for us to start our new life together. He also terminated the lease on the place Susan had been staying in and finalized our move to the new apartment. Susan, clearly unsettled by these developments, called me in a panic. "Hey, Michelle, where are you?" "I went to the house, and it's empty." "I'm at our new place with Kevin," I responded, keeping my tone steady. "New place? Where?" Susan's voice sounded frantic, her urgency palpable. "I'll let you know in time, but the lease on that house is canceled and everything has been moved out. I can't stay there anymore," I explained, emphasizing the fresh start Kevin and I were making. "So, Kevin's really cutting ties with me? He doesn't want to talk to me anymore?" she asked, her voice cracking with emotion. "Yes," I replied gently. "We're starting fresh somewhere else." I added, trying to make Susan understand the finality of her decision. "So, you were just pretending to be nice to stay here, huh? This was your plan all along," she accused sharply. "You couldn't make any money from selling the house Jack left you, right?" "How did you find out?" I asked, surprised by her knowledge. "You were telling the neighbors how frustrated you were that the house your husband left had no value, and then suddenly it was up for sale. People just can't keep quiet about things like that. Give me Kevin back. I'm his mother, so I have the right to live with him," Susan demanded. As I've said before, he doesn't want to see you, and I won't pressure him into something he's uncomfortable with. I replied calmly. Susan's temper flared. Who do you think you are, acting all high and mighty when you're just a broke, freeloading, plain wife? That's not a nice thing to say, I responded evenly. But it's true, she snapped. Well, I don't think our paths will cross much in the future, so it doesn't concern me, I continued calmly. But let me clarify something. Alongside my full-time job, I also have a side gig. In fact, I earn more than Kevin. Oh, really? What's this side gig? Susan asked skeptically. I initially studied web design, so I've been taking on projects in that field. With both my full-time salary and freelance work, I'm bringing in about $10,000 a month, I explained. What? That much? Susan was clearly taken aback by my financial situation, not expecting that the wife she had underestimated was earning more than she could have imagined. But none of this concerns you, I continued. Kevin has cut ties with you, and I'll be distancing myself even further. Wait a minute, if you're making that kind of money, maybe you could lend me a hand? Susan suggested hopefully. I didn't hesitate. I ended the call and blocked her number. It was a relief to expose Susan's true intentions and leave her feeling regretful. Knowing I wouldn't have to deal with her again brought me a sense of peace. Susan was now completely out of the loop about our lives. She didn't know where my parents lived or where I worked. With Kevin working from home and our new address kept private, the chances of her finding us were incredibly slim. We later learned through the grapevine that Susan had always had a problem with overspending. Any inheritance left by Jack had quickly dwindled to nearly nothing. She had tried to sell the house but only received low offers, which further compounded her financial difficulties. Despite these setbacks, her old habits persisted. A neighbor from our old neighborhood contacted Kevin, sharing that Susan's spending habits had changed. She relied heavily on payday loans, which had plunged her deeper into debt. She had even resorted to asking neighbors for loans, though without any success, worsening her financial woes. It seemed like karma was finally catching up with her. Meanwhile, Kevin and I were living a peaceful life, blissfully free from any disruptions from Susan. We split our time between our new home and my parents' place as we prepared for the arrival of our child. With the baby on the way, we were excited about the future and looked forward to nurturing our family and cherishing every moment together. This newfound peace was something we treasured deeply, knowing the chaos that had once surrounded us was finally behind us.